In this video, we will show you how to replace your fuel pump on this Ford Fusion. This will be located beneath your rear seat. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Make your way under the hood. We're looking for the fuse box. Take hold of the latch and lift it up and out of place. The next thing we'll do is have a look at the legend here. We're looking for relay number 54. That's this one, right in the center of the squared out area. We'll find that area down inside the fuse box and remove that relay. You can tell that there should be several that make their way around this outer portion. The center one is the one that we will be removing. We'll pull that out of place, give it a quick inspection. If you see any funny colors, that's corrosion and it would need to be dealt with. Set this aside. At this point, the next thing we want to do is start up the vehicle. You may find that it starts and then stalls out. Once it stalls out, attempt to start it again. We're confirming that there's no fuel pressure inside of the fuel system. Once we've done so, we can continue. Perfect. Now that we're sure there's no pressure in the fuel system, we can continue on by disconnecting our negative battery terminal. Using an 8mm wrench, go ahead and turn this counterclockwise. We're going to loosen this just enough that we can remove it from the vehicle. We'll disconnect that from the battery, give it a quick inspection, and set it aside. Now in the back of the passenger compartment, we're going to dislodge the lower aspect of the rear seat. You'll find that it has two locks, one along each side. Carefully make your way along the front of the rear seat and start feeling along. In the center area here, you're going to find a lock. That lock will need to be pressed towards the driver's side. Once you've done so, you should be able to lift up on the rear seat a little bit. Dislodge both of these. Now once you have that dislodged, we're going to bring this up diagonally and start pulling it up and out of place. It does have two hooks, one along each side. This can be a little bit difficult at times. There we are. Now that we have the seat out of the way, let's make our way along the driver's side here. You're going to find that you have a protective panel that's held in place with three 7mm headed mounting bolts. Remove your mounting bolts and remove the panel. We'll give that a quick inspection and set it aside. Now, if when you had removed that cover, you found a mess that looks like this, it's important to make sure that you clean it up and then inspect the wiring harnesses and the fuel lines that lead to this area. Once you have this area tidied up, we'll continue on with our electrical connector. You will find that you have a locking tab on the inboard side. Go ahead and squeeze that in and separate this. You can use some pliers if you need to. As soon as you have that separated, give it a quick inspection. If you see any funny colors, that's corrosion and it would need to be dealt with. This one looks fine, so we'll set that wiring harness aside. Now that we have that disconnected, let's pay attention to our locking ring. We want to clean, inspect, and lubricate this area. Continue on to disconnecting your fuel line. There is always the possibility that there's fuel inside this area and it could potentially still be under pressure. To disconnect this, you're going to find that you have two locking tabs, one along each side of this. Typically, when doing so, you could reach underneath the area and pry it up a little bit. If you have a hard time using your finger under this area, you could use a small prying device or even continue using your pliers if needed. Just make my way underneath one side here. Along the other side with my finger. This red area should pop up. At this point, this is unlocked. We can continue on to removing this from the sending unit. The next thing that we'll have to do is start separating this locking ring. It's important to pay attention to the fact that it's made out of metal and metal could potentially spark. We're going to use a brass punch and a rubber mallet. Carefully make your way along each one of these ears. We'll break this free by tapping along this ear here, driving it counterclockwise to remove it. There's several of these that make their way around. Use whichever one works best for you. Just got this to break free here. There we go. At this point, we'll press this down, remove the locking ring, give it a close inspection, and set it aside. We will be reusing the locking ring. At this point, we'll tuck the line aside and start taking hold of the assembly and removing it from the vehicle. It could potentially still have fluid in it. Let's make sure we have a collection receptacle handy. See a lot of fuel in this one. Try not to get any inside the vehicle. We just want to dump this out if possible. Try to remove as much of this fuel as possible into the fuel tank. We'll pull this up and out of here. You may find that you have an issue with this. Now we can start disconnecting this area here. To disconnect this, you'll find you have two locking ears. Squeeze in on each of those and carefully remove them. Over a collection receptacle, we'll make sure that this is fully drained. Now on the bench, we'll continue on with disconnecting our two electrical connectors. As for the wiring connector that has the two smaller wires, there's a locking tab in the center here. Go ahead and depress that and separate it. Quick inspection for corrosion on both sides. Continue on to your next electrical connector. Now we'll start dislodging the upper area here. You're going to find that you have a small snap ring holding this in place. We'll use a pick and carefully remove it. Give it a close inspection, set it aside. You will be reusing it. There's that. We'll just give it a quick inspection. We can set it aside. At this point, we can start separating it, but we do need to pay attention to the fact that we have this hose. Just gently start tugging this. We'll set this area aside, and we can pay attention along here. Dislodge the wiring harness. Should slide right underneath that area. Now we can disconnect the electrical connector. Use our pick. Just make our way right in here. You'll find that you have a few more locking tabs. Use our pick, make the way underneath there. Just lift up on that as we go. Just have to make our way right in here. Start lifting this up and out of place. Continuing with locking tabs, you're going to find that you have several more that you will have to dislodge to be able to remove the fuel pump from this assembly. You can use a pick, small screwdriver, whatever you have. Go ahead and pry those out of place and start pressing it down and out. Continue underneath this area. Slide that off of there. We'll just give it a quick inspection. Now we can start removing the pump from inside of this unit. Slide that right out of there. It's held in place with a rubber O-ring. There it is, friend. Let's quickly have a look at our original fuel pump in comparison to the brand new one. You will find that you have to remove the O-ring from the original. Once you've removed that, continue on to removing the adapter. Inspect the adapter and swap it over to the brand new pump. Install the brand new O-ring onto the brand new pump. Now we can prepare to install this. We'll take it and put it in position. Have a quick look inside this area. You're going to be able to see exactly how this pump will need to fit inside. Align it, slide it down and into position, making sure that the O-ring stays in place on the fuel pump. Give it a little twist. Once it feels as though it fits in, go ahead and press it in. Listen for a click, give it a light tug to make sure it's completely secure. Continue on to your filtering unit. We'll take this and put it in place, aligning all of our locking tabs. Once you feel as though you have them aligned, press them in. Double check each and every one of your 5 locks to make sure it's completely secure. Now we can start bringing this down into the base. Pay attention to your hose. You want to make sure you have it underneath this locking tab. At this point, we want to align all 3 of the locking tabs. Just double check. Press it down into position. Double check to make sure it's completely secure. Let's continue on with the wiring harness. Press it in, listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure that's completely secure. At this point, we'll be continuing on with this area. Align your electrical connectors and press them in. Now we can take this and swing it into the proper position, being careful not to put too much of a tug on our wiring. There we are. Let's continue on with our locking clip. Make sure it slides into this area. Press it in as far as you can, listen for a click. Once you feel as though you have that in there secure, go ahead and give it a little tug. We want to make sure it cannot pull out. Let's just double check to make sure everything's secured properly. And let's get over to the vehicle. Back in the passenger compartment, we'll be looking along the top of the fuel tank. Go ahead and remove that gasket. Give it a close inspection. Continue on cleaning up the mounting point where the gasket will sit, and then after that, we'll be continuing on with installing the gasket and the pump assembly. After that, the locking ring. If you have that cleaned down, we'll continue on with the gasket. It's important to make sure you have a good seal here, so you want to take your time through this process. Double check to make sure it's completely seated. Now it's time to install the pump assembly. Let's connect in our hose. Press it in, listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure it's completely secure. You don't want that separating on you while you're driving down the road. Now we'll continue on with our level sensor. We're going to have to flex this a little bit and slide it down into place. Careful not to damage anything. Bring this down into the proper position. Before you continue on too much further down, triple check to make sure your seal is seated properly all the way around. Let's take hold of the assembly, line it up, press it down. Once you have it pressed down, the next thing you want to do is take hold of that locking ring. We'll take this and put it in position. Once we have it started on, we can continue on with the fuel line. Press in the fuel line, listen for a click, lock it in, give it a tug, make sure that's completely secure. This is extremely important. Now let's go ahead and lock in the fuel pump assembly with its locking ring, driving it in until each of its locking points are completely locked. Okay, just double check all the way around. Perfect. Press in the electrical connector. Now before we continue on with our panel, let's just do one final check in this area. Confirm everything's secured properly. And now we can continue on with the plate. Put it in position. Start in all three of your mounting bolts, snug them up. Let's continue on with the rear seat. We'll take this and slide it into place, making sure that we have all of our seat belts in the upright position. Just slide them right into their corresponding grooves. While bringing this down at an angle, we'll push it in towards the rear of the vehicle, hook it in, and then press it on along the front to lock it down. Double check to make sure it's completely secure and confirm that each of your 3 seatbelt buckles are in the upright position. Back under the hood, we'll be continuing on with our relay. Take that and put it into its original position. You don't want to mix this up. Close the cap. Double check to make sure that's completely secure. The next thing we'll do is reconnect our negative battery terminal. Before we do, we just want to clean up the terminal end on the battery itself. You can use a fine piece of sandpaper or just use one of these wire brushes. The next thing you'll want to do is make sure that you clean up the cable itself. This is mainly important on the contact point. Finish cleaning that as necessary, and we'll continue on to sliding this into place. Press it down onto the battery as far as possible. Continue on with your 8mm and make sure it's nice and tight. Okay friend, we finished installing our fuel pump. At this point, you want to attempt to start up the vehicle. You may find that it takes a couple extra cranks to start, and then it should stay running. Double check to make sure you don't have a fuel leak, and then take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.